You are at Lake Rant, where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one's for MOL352, who says, rant about Dream Theater. Oh boy. So Dream Theater is a progressive metal band that I was very briefly into in like 2006, 2007, mostly for their album Train of Thought, which was their seventh album. And it's probably their heaviest, or at least at the time it was. And if you listen to a lot of prog, it's especially prog metal. I mean, Dream Theater is like one of the more influential bands in the genre, and they've been around for a long time. But they certainly have not moved it in any new directions. If you listen to prog metal, you pretty much know what Dream Theater sounds like. You probably have listened to them. Um, Generally, I find their music to be like I hesitate to use the word pretentious because I don't know if music itself can be pretentious, but they themselves are pretentious. And they seem to have this mindset that, like, what makes a good song is, like, as many moving parts, as much complexity, as many time signature changes, as many ghost notes as possible. And, like, this is what is good music. And so a lot of their stuff comes off as very technical wankery. It comes off as just, like, no particular emotion being conveyed other than just showing off like the technicality of how you play. And for a little while I was interested in that because when I first was getting into prog, they were one of the first bands I discovered. I was into prog and metal music at the time, so I listened to them quite a bit, but I ended up basically diverting to other bands instead. Basically realizing that like I didn't think their music was that interesting, and I also didn't like the personality they were portraying. I remember reading this magazine article, and I'm sure I've talked about this in a video before, but like it was an interview with them where they literally stated, one of the members literally stated, there's these bands that are kind of similar to us, like Tool or Mastodon or the Mars Volta, and even though we're better than them, they're more popular. It's almost like people just don't like stuff that's good. And I remember reading that, and at the time, I was a much bigger fan of all three of the bands that they had just named. And I was just like, how could you possibly think you're better than the Mars Volta? Like, I don't. What do you think you're bringing to the table that deserves even comparison to that like it was baffling, especially that they would even bother comparing themselves to those bands who they don't really sound that much like. I remember posting about this on a message board and somebody just being like, well, at least a band was comparing themselves to Tool for once instead of, other people comparing, like, oh, this sounds like Tool. Which they don't, other than in very superficial ways. So, yeah, that was just so, like, aggravating to me that, like, they would have that attitude towards, other bands, and they've continued to put out music that all of it just feels increasingly over time more like a wank fest. Like if you listen to some of their older music, there's just a lot more feeling and like songwriting being done other than just like creating complicated riffs and stringing them together. And I haven't heard any of their albums in the last probably 5-10 years, but the ones I've heard what I have heard, I've been like, oh, that fucking blows ass. And again, I was never that even into most of their music other than Train of Thought. But even that album over time, I kind of lost interest in. It just seemed so like each song was trying to be this big, important statement of some kind. Like each song is this long, fucking 10 minutes of going in depth on some subject matter lyrically, but the commentary it makes is very basic and kind of edgy, kind of fedora wearing. Yeah, I don't know. I just think I'm just not a fan. I mean, I'm sorry if you are a huge fan and listening to this because I think it'd be easy enough to appreciate their music on just a surface level and just be like, yeah, it sounds cool. There's cool riffs, there's cool time signatures. The guy can sing. I like him as the main character on the Arion album, The Human Equation, but I don't know. I feel like when you try to dive deeper into their music, there's just not a lot. there's not a lot there beyond technical details, like, oh, these time signatures, they switch the song Dance of Eternity, they switch time signatures like 33 times, and it's like, yeah, but this doesn't sound good. Like, you listen to it, and it's not an interesting song, you know, in my opinion. So, maybe that's just me. I'd rather listen to, like, jazz fusion if I really wanted to listen to super technical music. So, it is what it is.